In this lab activity, we will review basic HTML and CSS code. We will cover percentages in width property, fluid design, box sizing property, and the attribute equals value selector. By the time we're done with all the coding, your page should look something like this. To begin, create a Lab1 folder, and inside that Lab1 folder, create a CSS folder. And then we'll drop in our HTML and CSS files. In this videos, I will be using Adobe Dreamweaver, but you can use whatever text editor you would like to use. When I go to File New, I can choose to create a new HTML file. And in Adobe Dreamweaver, it automatically adds code. I'll leave the code alone and start editing that. I'll start with the title, change that to your last name, and then Lab1. And let's go ahead and link or create a link element to an external style sheet. We'll make it so that the browser looks for it in the CSS folder that we just created, and then we will call our CSS file style.css when we get to that. Type equals text /CSS, and then relationship rel equals style sheet. I'll save this to the correct location. We'll call this one your last name dash lab dash 1.html. Next, let's create that CSS file. So go to File New, Command N or Control N if you're on a Windows computer. And just like the HTML portion, Dreamweaver automatically adds code on there. Sometimes this causes issues in previews, so I will just go ahead and get rid of that. And then save this to your CSS folder and call it style.css. Which I don't know if I did that correctly, so let me check. Maybe I didn't. At this point, this is what your folder should look like. There should be a last name dash lab dash 1.html file, except change last name to your last name. And then in the same folder, there will be a CSS folder with the style.css file in it. Now we're ready to start adding code in there. I'll start by adding a div, class example1, applied to it. I'll put in my closing div tag, and inside this div, I will create a paragraph. There's my opening tag and my closing tag, and inside I will say box 1. I'll create another div. I'll pretty much use the same code, so I'll just copy that. I'll separate these divs with a line break. And I'll paste in that second div, except I will change the class to example 2, and I'll change the paragraph to say box 2 instead of box 1. Save that and go to your style sheet, and now we'll put in the example 1 class selector. We'll give this a width of 300 pixels and the height of 300 pixels. For the background, I will make it black. But at this point, if you would like to use a different color, feel free to do so. Just ensure that when you put in a color for the text, that it's something that will be visible. Since I have a black background, I will make my text white. I will go ahead and copy all that because I will be pretty much using the same information for the example 2 class selector, except that I will add a couple of declarations to this one. First, let's take a look at where we're at. Save your CSS and HTML file. And let's check out a preview of your last name -lab1.html file. Open that with Google Chrome. And what you should see are two boxes. One that says box 1 and another one that says box 2. And it is 300 pixels wide, 300 pixels tall. In the beginning of this video, I mentioned that I wanted to cover box sizing property. So that's what we're going to get to in a minute or two. The change that I want to make between box 1 and box 2 is I want to add a padding so that box 2 is not so close to the edge. I'll add padding, and then 20 pixels. Save that. And we get something like this. Now, box 1 and box 2, even though they both say width of 300 pixels, the other one is no longer 300 pixels. It added 20 pixels to the left and 20 pixels to the right. So now box 2 is actually 340 pixels. By default, this is what happens. Your browser adds in to its calculation of the width any kind of padding that you add to an element. To overcome this, we can use the box sizing property, and we can give it a value of border box. In doing so, the browser will no longer include the padding property when it comes to the calculation of the width. In the next video, we will start with this bottom portion over here.